Hello everyone and welcome to the beginning of a new series where I'm going to be taking this model from Raging Heroes, which is the altar of the Succubi. We're going to be getting all the parts ready. You can see them all in baggies here in front of me, and we're going to be building it and we're going to be painting it. So this is a really interesting model. It's absolutely huge. You can see by the artwork here. This is quite a substantial and complicated looking miniature, but hopefully it won't be too bad. So this is a little booklet that talks about the design process, has some concept art in there, and yeah, it's all very interesting. A little difficult for me to read with the text, the font style, but you know, that's just me. But we're going to give it a go and see what we come up with. Now, the one thing is, there's only a build video on YouTube that supports this at the minute. I haven't seen any build diagrams or anything, which is a bit of a shame. But through the build video, I did pick up a few pointers. There is a number and an alphanumeric system to the parts to ensure that the bits you're gluing together are correct and in the correct order. However, we're not going to worry about that right now. What we do need to worry about is getting everything out of the baggies and into a little bowl of soapy warm water, which I have here, which we're going to start cleaning the parts with. After we clean the parts, we're going to be then clipping away all the excess material, so all the gates and any flash that we come across. And then after that, we can get stuck into the build. So this first video is really just going to be getting some of the parts out and giving them a bit of a clean. Now, I'm using a toothbrush here, which is, I think, the best way, really. So it'll give us a good little method of cleaning the parts up. So I'm just going to take one baggie at a time and put the parts into our warm water. And this is a good, this is best practice for any resin miniature. And make sure that your water isn't too hot, because then you'll start distorting the parts and warping them. And don't put too much soap in either. We could potentially want to rinse this off under cold water later on, but I'm not too concerned about that at this stage. I think just a quick little rinse around in the bowl should be enough for us. It's really just a case of going across this and scrubbing it with the toothbrush, because you're looking to get rid of all the release agent or any oils or anything that is built up during the casting process. So we'll lay them out, and we'll lay them out per baggie. We'll figure out which parts are from what baggie, and we'll lay them out in neat little piles. So as you can see now, all the parts have been laid out on the baggies that they came from. That's just in case we've missed any bits, or, you know, there's, in some cases, particularly with the Harpies and the Slave models on this, that some of the bits have already come off the sprues, so they're inside that baggie. And we want to keep them together just in case, because I'm starting to get an idea that a lot of these parts are bagged on their particular things. So we have some bits over here which all appear to be one particular element. We have stuff that's off screen over here, which is like the body of the carriage and stuff like that. And I think if I keep it this way, it'll be a bit more organized, and I'll find what I'm looking for a little bit more easily. So potentially each baggie is a sub-assembly, and I'm going to treat it as that for the time being. However, right now we're going to let all of this dry just in the air, and then when I'm happy that everything's dry, we'll go in with our craft knives and stuff and start to clip away all the flash and all the sprue that's been left on the models from the casting. So now all our parts have been washed, dried and put back into the baggies that they all came out of. I assume they're in baggies because it's sort of like a sub-assembly. Everything looks, from each baggie, looks like it's to do with something else, or to do with everything else that's in the baggie, which is an easy way to organize this. So we're going to be moving on to cleaning the parts up and removing our flash and the remnants of gates and stuff like that. So we'll pick one baggie and we'll just go for it. So we'll start with our wheels. And this being a resin model, of course, does have these gates and flash on them from the moulding process, so pretty easy to get rid of there. So we have three tools that we're going to be using. We have a set of shear clippers, we have a file, and we have a craft knife. So the first step we want to do is use the shear clippers and we want to start removing these large pieces of gate here. So we want to, for best practice, we want to clip away, further away, and start to work our way down to the part. We don't want to clip off too much at a time because it will risk damaging the base part, but that's worked out pretty well. So we look around the part, we'll then take our file, because there's a little bit of a ridge here on this flat surface. Just make sure that's been cleaned down nice and flat, like so, and that's all that needs done to it. Then move on and just look at some of the other parts that have come out of this baggie. For instance, this one doesn't need any clipping, but we'll just take a file to it. Like so. So long as these parts are flat, the part will sit nice and neatly on your tabletop or your surface. So the idea is to go across every part, at least for these first few baggies. What I'm doing is I'm taking all the bits that are to do with the main construction of the actual altar, and we're leaving the harpies, and we'll tackle them as we build. So once we have all of this built, we'll then look at the harpies and move on with them. See, again, this one's just a little bit more harsh, so we can use our craft knife on it. And remember, when using a craft knife, cut away from you, holding the part firmly and holding the craft knife firmly as well. So at this point, everything has now been prepped and ready to build, still in all its baggies, so I'm assuming these are going to be sub-assemblies. Now, they do have a build video. Raging Heroes does have a build video on this, which I have watched a couple of times, and I just try and familiarise myself with the parts. However, we're going to get straight into the build, and I think we're probably going to time-lapse it. I'm not too sure, but yeah, let's open up baggies and let's start gluing stuff. Now, because it's a resin model, obviously super glue, or CA glue as a lot of people will call it now, is the way to go. So we'll start with the wheels and let's just see how we get on. Okay, so at this stage I'm going to stop building because I have most of the carriage put together. I don't have any of the harpies or the figures yet. I want to build them separately and have them go on after this has been tended to. Now, being being a kind of model that it is, it's a very complex sculpt. It's really not meant for people that are new to the hobby in any sort of shape or fashion. You need to understand this model needs a lot of what I'm going to call aftercare. So once you've put it together, you're going to need to do a lot more to it to bring it up to the level that you'll actually want and actually feel happy with. So, for example, we have gaps pretty much in every line. Something hasn't fit quite right, or is a little bit warped. But you haven't noticed the warp because of the shape of the model until you've put it together and you've went, oh no, that bit's warped. But what's going to happen now is we're going to start gap filling, and gap filling is going to be far more intensive than any other resin model I've worked with previously, simply because it's an organic shape that's been put together, it's made of resin, and none of the parts really wanted to be snug. So this is not a beginner's piece at all. There is quite a few gaps in here. Some of them are quite extensive. The part I'll point out here is the top of this disc here, where it just does not want to sit, and the two halves of the bowl do not want to be flush whatsoever. So without removing more material to the point where the parts were going to fit even less, I decided I was going to clean the parts as best as I could, glue it together, and then fix whatever I was left with once it was built. Because at this point, there's areas in here I won't be able to reach once I put all the other figures and stuff on, and it'll make the model a whole lot more fragile to work with because it's some small areas with lots of figures hanging off the front and sides and back, and then when the harpies are on, it's going to be very complex and very difficult to negotiate around without accidentally breaking something. So from this stage on, we're going to get the carriage filled, primed, and ready for paint. And off camera, I'll be doing the same with all the figures and harpies and trying to work that out too, because I have instruction sheet now, which I can refer to as I'm putting together all the other figures. So I'll be doing that off camera because I just not feeling so confident in my own build ability at the minute after building this. It's made me question my approach to a lot of things on resin models, but this is fine. I can push on with it now and do all the gap filling. I'll show a little bit of that, not a lot, but I will show a little bit. If you want more information on that, you can check out Raging Heroes' build video as well, where one of their designers takes you through the build and the filling of the different parts of the model.